everyone, it's Hannah here from Hand Done Crochet, and today I'm going to share with you how to make the Richmond Shawl, which is a new shawl pattern I've designed. It's available for free on my blog or to purchase as an ad-free and printable PDF, and I'll pop the links in the description so that you can find it. It's a great lightweight shawl made in fingering weight yarn that's really good for any kind of season, I think, actually, because you can layer it up in the winter and the autumn, or you can use it in spring and summer just as a light pretty cover to go over something. It's a boomerang style shawl, so it means it kind of curves around the corner with the increases and decreases that we do, and I'll show you how to do that in this tutorial. To make the shawl, you're going to need some fingering weight yarn, and I've chosen Palette from We Crochet. It's Coriander Heather, and you get 231 yards in 50 grams. It's 100% Peruvian Highland wool, so you will need to take just good care of it. But all I needed to use to make this shawl was 3 balls of it, so 150 grams was plenty to make this shawl with. You will also need a 5mm crochet hook or a size H, or the hook to meet the gauge, a pair of scissors and a yarn needle. So let's get going. Throughout the tutorial I'm going to be talking in US crochet terms, but the pattern does come in both UK and US terminology, and you can choose whichever one you feel most comfortable with. To begin then, we're going to make a slip knot and pop it on our hook, and then we're going to chain 4. And that counts as 1 stitch, so 1 double crochet and then 1 chain. And so for the first row we're going to double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. So that's this very first one here, and that's your first row complete. That's 2 stitches. And so now we're going to turn, and for row 2 we are going to chain 3, and all chain 3s count as stitches throughout this pattern. We're going to double crochet in the stitch at the base of that chain 3, so the first stitch of your row, and then we're going to work 2 double crochet in the next stitch. So that now gives us a total of 4 for that row. Turn to work row 3, and we're going to chain 3 for our first stitch, and then we're going to work 2 double crochet in the stitch at the base of the chain. And now we're going to double crochet in the next, and then we're going to double crochet 2 together over the last 2. So these last 2 stitches here, which is a chain 3 from your last row and then the next stitch in. So to double crochet stitches together, we're going to work as if you're going to make a double crochet, but don't actually complete that. And then you're going to start a new stitch in the next one, and then work as if you're going to complete that. And then on the last go of this stitch, yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook, and then so that makes 1 stitch out of 2 from the previous row. Row 4, we're going to chain 3, and then we're going to double crochet 2 together over the stitch at the bottom of your chain and the next stitch. Then we're going to double crochet in 2, and then you're going to work 3 double crochet into this very last stitch here. And so you should now have 7 stitches in that row. Now we turn to work row 5, and we're going to chain 3 and work 2 double crochet in the stitch at the base of that chain. And now double crochet in 4, and then double crochet 2 together over the last 2 stitches. And so you should have 8 stitches now. And now we turn. For row 6, we're going to chain 3. We're going to double crochet 2 together. And that's working in the stitch at the bottom of that chain, 3, and the next stitch. We're going to double crochet in each stitch to the last stitch now. And then work 3 double crochet into this last stitch. And now for row 7, we need to chain 3 and work 2 double crochet into the stitch at the base of that chain. And now we're going to double crochet into each stitch to the last 2. So your last 2 is going to be this chain 3 here, and then the stitch directly next to it. So double crochet into each stitch till you get to those 2. So now double crochet 2 together, and 10. So now we have row 6 and row 7, the last 2 rows that we've worked, that form the repeat. And so we're going to work rows 8 to 13 as a repeat of row 6 and 7. So if you go ahead and do that, and so will I, and I'll meet you back here when we're ready to start row 14. Now we're at the end of row 13, we can kind of see the shape that the shawl is going to become. It's kind of got this arch here, and it's also curving round here too. That is more pronounced in the earlier rows. The further along you get, the less obvious that curve is. But you can kind of see how it's going to work and then be able to wrap around your neck really nicely. So now we can move on and work the second set pattern for the shawl, which is really similar in the way that we decrease at one side and increase at the other side each row. But in this middle section, we're going to have something a little bit different. So it's not just going to be plain double crochet from now on. So at the end of row 13 you should have 20 stitches, and so to begin row 14 we are going to chain 3 and then double crochet 2 together over the first 2 stitches. And now we're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch and then double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then you repeat those 2. You're going to double crochet into this next stitch, chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet into the next, chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet into the next, chain 1, skip the next stitch and double crochet into the next, and chain 1. So we just keep going until we get to the last stitch of the row. So the chain 1 and then we skip the next, and then in this last stitch we're going to work 3 double crochet. And that's row 14 complete. For row 15 we're going to turn and we're going to chain 3 and work 2 double crochet in that same stitch at the bottom of that chain 3. We're going to chain 1, skip that next stitch, and then we're going to work a double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, which there you see now is your chain, and you're going to work a double crochet into the next stitch. So now it's quite easy to see that you are going to chain, skip the chain and then work into the stitch. So you carry on in this way across this row. So double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, and you keep going until you get to the last 2 stitches of the row. So now we're at the last 2 stitches and we're going to double crochet 2 together. And that's row 15 complete. Row 16 will feel really familiar because it's similar to what we did at the beginning with row 6 and 7. We're going to chain 3, double crochet 2 together over the stitch at the base of the chain and the next stitch, which is actually a chain here. So you can either go into the actual chain stitch or you can work into the chain space. It's entirely up to you. And then we're going to work a double crochet into each stitch to the last. So that means each stitch and each chain. And again, you can work into the chain space or into the chain itself, whichever you prefer. And then when we get to the last stitch, you're going to work 3 double crochet into the last. And that's row 16. For row 17, we're going to chain 3, and then work 2 double crochet in the stitch at the base of the chain, and then we're going to double crochet in each stitch along until the last 2. And now for our last 2, we're going to work a double crochet 2 together. So at the end of row 17, we should have 26 stitches, and rows now 14 to 17 create this second pattern set for us. So this is 14, 15, 16, 17, and you're going to repeat that up to row 29. So if you want to go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you back here when you've repeated those 4 rows up to a total of 29 rows. Now you've completed up to row 29, you're now ready to work the rest of the shawl. So you'll notice though that I haven't completed up to row 29 because I can show you now what you need to do next without working the rest. So after you've worked this repeat section up until row 29, we will be ready to start row 30. And now row 30 to 33 is another 4 row repeat that you're going to then repeat again. So it sets a pattern for you. It's really similar to the last 4 rows we've done, except that where we've done a double crochet stitch here in these 2 rows, we're actually going to do a half double crochet puff stitch instead. So I will show you that now. So to begin row 30, you will have more stitches than me, remember. You're going to do a chain 3, and then you're going to double crochet 2 together. You're then going to chain 1 and skip 1, and so just as you did before here, you're going to chain 1, skip 1, and then work into the next stitch. And this now is going to be a 3 half double crochet puff stitch. So I realized that a half double crochet is not the same height as a double crochet, but for puff stitches I like to really pull them up to the height of the row. So we have chained 1 and we have skipped that next stitch, and so now we're going to do a 3 half double crochet puff stitch. So yarn over and put through and pull up a loop, and so pull it up to where you need it to be. Yarn over, hook through the stitch, pull up a loop. That's 2. Yarn over, put it through the stitch, pull up a loop, and that's 3. And then to complete, you yarn over and pull through all 3. And then we chain 1 and you skip the next, and then you do another puff stitch in the next one. So that's 1, 2 and 3, and close your stitch. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, 1, 2 and 3 puff stitch in the next. Chain 1, skip 1, 1, 2, 3 puff stitch in the next. Chain 1, skip 1. And so you're going to carry on like that, doing those 2 stitch repeats there until you get to the last stitch of that row. And so now we've chained 1 and we skip this one, and we're at the last stitch of the row, and we're going to work 3 double crochet into that very last stitch. And that will be your row 30. So we're going to turn now and be ready to work row 31. So we chain 3 and we work 2 double crochet in the stitch at the base of that chain. And now we're going to chain 1 and skip 1, and then we're going to work a 3 half double crochet puff in the next stitch. So it's 1, 2 and 3, remembering to pull up to the height of your row. And then you're going to chain 1, skip 1, which then in these rows actually is quite tricky to see sometimes. You've got a very little chain stitch here, and then you're going to work into this one here. So then you've got a 1, 2, 3 puff stitch, chain 1, skip 1, which is here, and then a puff stitch into the next. So the way that they sit means that they are almost diagonal to each other. It makes like a bit of a V shape. It doesn't look like they're on top of each other, but that's right. You're doing it right if it looks like that. And so now you're going to carry on until the last 2 stitches of the row. And so now we're at the last 2 stitches of the row. Because we've chained 1, we're going to skip this one, and now we're going to work a double crochet 2 together in the last 2 stitches of the row. And that's row 31 complete. So now row 32 and 33 are just a repeat of these 2 rows here, which are the full stitch rows. So rather than working puff stitches, you're going to just work in each stitch with your increase and your decrease at either end. So row 30 to 33 becomes your next set pattern, and you're going to repeat that up to row 45. And at the end of row 45, you should have 68 stitches. So if you want to work up to the end of row 45, and I'll meet you back here. So once you've completed row 45, which is here, you've now got all that you need to complete the entire shawl, because the next section is a repeat of the second pattern, which you see is here. So that's just that 4 row repeat using a double crochet and a chain 1 space, and you're going to work that from rows 46 to 61. And then once you finish that, you're going to do the puff stitch repeat, so the sets of 4 up until here. So that will be rows 62 to 77. And then the top section, in all honesty, is like this because I forgot where I was at and I lost count. And I just thought, why not do something a bit different for the top of the shawl, or the edge that's going to be actually across your neck. So now we are going to work repeats of the rows. We're going to work the puff stitch for 2 rows, the regular double crochet for 2 rows, puff stitch for 2 rows, regular double crochet for 2 rows, and then to finish off you're going to do 2 rows of solid double crochet at the end, and the increase and the decrease stay the same throughout. So always make sure you know which direction you're going as to whether you increase or you decrease. Once you've finished your shawl, I would really recommend blocking it, because it really helps. This one has been blocked, and as you see, it's really different to the wibbly wobbly sample that I've started here. It really helps the stitches to pop out, and you can see the detail and the open work as well. It's really important to do that. So for 100% wool like this, I wouldn't completely wet block it. You can spray block it, or you could steam block it, whichever you prefer, or you could dry block it and just leave it and let it find its own natural shape as long as you pin it nicely. I really hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial and that it's been helpful. I'd really love to see your version of the shawl, so come and find me at Hand Jan Crochet. shawl.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Follow me, subscribe here, tap the bell button and let me know what you're making because I'd really love to know. I'll be back soon with more free patterns and tutorials. Until then, bye!